love to hunt mule deer. Hi, I'm Jim Zumbo. Welcome to Secrets to Success in Hunting Muleys. In this video, I'm going to try to tell you everything you need to know about muleys, how to hunt them, when to hunt them, why to hunt them, and everything you wanted to know but were afraid to ask. So watch this show.
Jim Zumbo is one of America's foremost sportsmen. Jim has written many outdoor books, and as hunting editor of Outdoor Life magazine, he has shared many exciting hunts with millions of dedicated readers worldwide. His highly ethical, down-home approach to hunting has created a new way to look at our great sport as a true family endeavor. Jim now shares his wealth of hunting knowledge and expertise in his new video series, Secrets to Success for Muleys.
First of all, a little bit of fact on mule deer behavior. Muleys are called diurnal by the biologists. That means they're very active in the evening, early in the morning, late in the afternoon. Now, as a hunter, it's important for you to know that. You know, every deer hunter has some goals. Before you go on a hunt, you pretty much know in your mind what you're looking for. Now, some hunters are looking for meat, and that's fine. Maybe you're looking for a doe or even a fawn. Maybe you're looking for any buck, a small buck, a big buck, it doesn't matter. Any kind of buck will be fine. But maybe you're hunting for a trophy buck. In the case of mule deer, maybe a big old guy with 30-inch antlers. So you've got to make that decision before you go hunting. Just what are you looking for? Because that's going to be really important in your planning process. Let's say you're after a trophy muley. But you know, really, what is a trophy? A trophy is in the mind of the beholder. To some people, a 30-inch buck is a trophy. To other folks, maybe it's just a nice, rugged, massive four-pointer. So you've got to make that determination first. Now, one of the best ways to do that is to check the record book and look at the statistics. But here's a clue. Make sure the facts that you're looking for are recent. A lot of big old bucks were taken back in the 50s and 60s. Those areas no longer produce bucks like that. So you've got to find places that more recently produce those bigger heads. So when you're going after a trophy, go to places that traditionally produce them. Now, if you want to be a real trophy hunter, you've got to have the ability to pass on lesser bucks. And believe me, that ain't easy. I've been there and done that. You look at a buck that's got a nice four-point rack, maybe he's 22, 23, 24 inches wide. That's massive. He's a handsome animal. But if you're looking for that 28-incher or that 30-incher, you're going to have to be able to determine, first of all, how big that buck is and whether or not you have what it takes to pass him up. Now, you can tell how big those deer are by looking at their ears. A big old buck has antlers 3 or 4 inches beyond his ear. That's going to give him 28 or 30-inch spread. So when you go trophy hunting, do your research and plan accordingly. Make sure the area you're hunting indeed has those trophies. By doing that, you're going to enjoy your hunt much better. A big decision for you to make when you're planning your mule deer hunt is, are you going to do it on your own with your buddies, or are you going to hunt with an outfitter? Those are two major objectives, and you've got to put some careful thought in that. You might think right off the bat, well, I can't afford an outfitter, so I'm going to do it on my own. There may be some problems with that because you may go out on your own and save a lot of money, but be in an area where there are no deer. And you might do that 2 or 3 or 4 years in a row and find yourself spending a whole lot more money than if you had initially signed on with an outfitter the first year. Now, doing a hunt on your own is a lot of fun. I do it all the time. Go out there with your buddies, and it can be economical. But one thing you want to do is that research. Make sure you plan it accordingly, and you'll have a better hunt by yourself. Now, let's say you do want to hunt with an outfitter. How do you choose one? And you want to make sure that you find an outfitter out there who is reliable and he's hunting in the kind of game country that you expect to see, the kind of game that you expect to hunt. So when you're planning that hunt with an outfitter, check his references. Make calls to those references. Don't write to them because very few people take the time to write back. And ask the outfitter a number of questions like, what is his hunter success? If you're interested in big animals, find out if he's got big animals in that area. Perhaps you want to do a drop camp. That's a little bit more economical as well. In other words, an outfitter takes you to an area and drops you off, hence the name, and he leaves you. Those are much cheaper than a fully outfitted hunt. What happens is he puts you in good game country, leaves you there, comes back and picks you up. But no matter what you do, whether you're hunting with your pals, or whether you're going with an outfitter on a fully guided hunt or on a drop camp hunt, make sure you do that planning. Do that research first, and believe me, you'll have a much better time on your hunt. You know, there's really 3 times a year when you can hunt muleys. There's the early season, when the deer are in the velvet. That means they haven't shed the velvet from their antlers. Basically, they're in the higher country then. They're gathered up in bachelor groups. I've seen as many as 21 big muleys in one group. That happened in Utah many years ago. Now, if you're a bow hunter, then you can expect those early seasons. But several western states allow September mule deer hunting in the high country. Those are often backcountry units. Some places you've got to draw a tag. In some states, you can just go in there on a general tag. But most of them are remote, so you're going to have to walk in there. So those are the early hunts. Then you've got the regular hunts that occur during the general season. And guess what happens then? That's when all the hunters are in the woods. That's when deer are at their very wariest. They're the most elusive because everybody's out there looking for them. Now, in most western states, those general hunts start in October, early October, middle of October, and perhaps as late as early November. So that, to me, is the toughest challenge of all, because there's a lot of folks out there. There's a lot of competition, especially if you're hunting on public land. So in order to get a big buck during that general season, you've got to hunt smart. And hopefully the points I present in this video are going to help you have that advantage in taking that buck. Now, the last or the late season is migration time that occurs in middle November, late November, and in the case of heavy snowfalls, that can sometimes happen in late October. Right now here it's snowing out, there's pretty deep snow, the bucks are coming out of the high country, a lot of them are already here. And this gives you an advantage for another reason. Not only do deer come down out of the mountains because there's no food up there and it's covered with snow, but that's when the rut occurs. Typically the mule deer rut peaks right after Thanksgiving. And the big bucks are coming down looking for the does. So if you can hunt a state that offers hunting during the late season, many times you'll have that double bonus. Again, snow kicks them out of the high country and deer in the rut. Muleys are not as wary as they normally are because they're looking for those does. So there you have your 3 seasons. No matter which season you choose, do a little bit of research and learn about mule deer behavior, because that's going to help you understand where those deer are going to be, why they're doing what they do, and how you should react and plan your hunt accordingly. Of all the big game animals I've hunted in North America, mule deer are by far the most adaptable. I found those critters all the way from sea level up to about 13,000 feet in elevation in Colorado's high country. In 1980, I wrote my first book on mule deer, and I examined all their habitats, in other words, the environments in which they live. And I came out with 8 basic general groups of habitat. And essentially they include desert, and I'm not talking about the desert mule deer, but I'm talking about the Rocky Mountain mule deer that lives down in the lower country in the alkali flats, down there in the rim rock. And then we have the agriculture areas. A lot of people don't appreciate the fact that muleys live around farms, and they're getting to be very, very smart like whitetails. They're very elusive. They're nocturnal in many of those environments. Another habitat is sagebrush. It's amazing how muleys can hide in that sage. My very first mule deer hunt back in the early 60s, I was hunting in sagebrush, and being an eastern boy, I was used to trees. And I was really amazed when it got light out. I was in a brand new area. There were no trees in the area. There was lots of sage. And I killed one of the best muleys to this day in that sagebrush environment. Then you've got the high brush environment. That includes oak brush, mountain mahogany, serviceberry. That's the kind of stuff that bucks love to be in, and they can hide really well in it. Another environment is called the PJ, or pinyon juniper. Those are the cedar trees and the pinyon trees that live in the benchlands, kind of the intermediate elevations before you get up in the higher country. The next one is called aspen. And aspen is essentially simply stands of aspen trees that may blanket hundreds and hundreds of acres, thousands of acres, maybe many square miles. Those are beautiful places to hunt, especially when the trees are yellow. Another environment is, of course, the good old evergreen timber. And that's where hunting can be really tough, where those muleys are in the mountains, especially during the early seasons, and sometimes during the general seasons, those deer are so elusive, that's where they hide. And then last, you've got the river bottom habitat. And basically, I mean those big old western rivers where you can gain access either by coming down trails, some of them you can drive to them, and some of them you can float. By the way, that's a lot of fun to take a raft down some of these big rivers and hunt muleys down in those corridors. So you see, there's 8 different ways to hunt deer. You've got to adapt to the place that you're hunting. Learn how deer behave, learn when they're going to be there, learn how to hunt them. And believe me, that's the way you'll be a more successful mule deer hunter. You know, before I do any hunt, the first thing I do is to scout. And you know where I scout? Not out here where the mule deer live, but in the house from my office. That's the best way to start, using the maps, using telephones. That's where I like to start, and that's what often makes me a successful mule deer hunter. Maps are a big source of my scouting when I'm looking for a place to hunt mule deer, especially if it's a brand new area. But even in places that I'm familiar with, I like to use a map to check on boundaries, for example. Many times we hunt, we're bordering private land. We may be hunting public land. We need to know where the boundaries are. So doing this kind of homework helps define the places we can and can't hunt. Also, another thing about mule deer is that they migrate in the mountainous areas. They come down to the winter areas. Sometimes you can get maps from government agencies that show those migration routes. So that's an excellent way to plan where to hunt if you're hunting late and there's snow in the high country. You can get maps from forest agencies for less than $5. The Bureau of Land Management in the West also has maps for the same price. Topo maps are my favorites as far as showing particular landmarks, small landmarks that aren't on bigger maps. For example, swamps, springs. They'll show contours, of course. The one thing about them, they don't show property ownership. But if you go to a forest map, which does show property ownership, what I like to do is I like to take crayons or some kind of colored pens, sit there with my topo map and sit there with my forest map and actually take a ruler and draw in those property lines on the topo map, so then I can work with just the topo map, and that shows me everything. Access roads, trails. That's another thing I like to do when I'm checking my maps, doing my scouting at home, and that's to find the access areas. Where are you going to go into your area? Where are the other hunters going to go in? Where may you camp? Those are all important things to know as far as planning your mule deer hunt. And of course, it's a great idea to get on that phone and call sources of information, and don't be shy. You'll be surprised if you call a game warden or a wildlife biologist, a lot of those folks are going to be receptive to your calls. I used to be a wildlife biologist for the federal government, and I love to talk to hunters. To me, it was a pleasant break in my job, which often was behind a desk. So if you're interested in finding out new places to go, pick up that phone and call those sources. You'll be amazed how helpful they are. Another reason I like to use a phone is to call ranchers, private landowners. Now, it's true that in much of the prime mule deer country around the West, you cannot get free permission. A lot of those lands are leased to outfitters or groups of hunters. But nonetheless, there are still a lot of ranchers who will let you hunt their property either for free or for a modest trespass fee. And it's really a whole lot better to have an idea where you're going to hunt on private land or public land by using that phone well before the hunt, rather than going out the day before, knocking on doors, and just finding yourself in a jam because you've run out of time. So get that work done well before the hunt. The longer before the hunt you do it, the better, because if you're calling a landowner, he's maybe going to be deluged with calls from other people. So give him a little bit of lead time, use that phone, use that map, plan your hunt accordingly. Most of my best mule deer hunts are the ones that I have planned thoroughly in advance, so remember that. You know, practically every one of us who hunts has had a mentor or a teacher. Isn't that right? I'll bet you have. I sure have. My mentors were my dad, my uncles, my grandfather. They took me hunting when I was a kid. I was 8 years old. They took my cousins, and we had a lot of fun, and we were learning from the adults. Yeah, that's so important these days, especially in these modern times when there's a lot of anti-hunting forces, a lot of people trying to stop hunting. We have to have that kind of recruitment. We've got to get the youth involved. What scares me a lot is when the average age of the hunter increases. You know what that means? That means that the kids aren't getting involved at a young age. You know, I'm a pretty blessed dad. I've got 3 girls and a boy, and they all hunt. And I took the time to take them hunting at a young age. And you should do the same thing. You know, there's an old saying that goes something like this: if you take a youngster hunting, you won't have to hunt for your youngster. And boy, is that the truth. Hunting is really a wholesome sport, and it's a tradition that's passed on from generation to generation. And if you don't pass it on, who else will? And remember one thing too, perhaps there's a youngster that lives next door or down the street who's with a single parent, lives with his or her mom, and doesn't have a chance to go hunting. Consider taking that young person with your child as well. A lot of folks have started in that manner, and they've been forever thankful to that person who took them. I've taken a number of kids hunting with my kids, and they've always appreciated it. So think about that. Hunting isn't just necessarily a sport for adults. It's for the kids too. You'll get a lot more out of it if you'll take the time with the youngsters, believe me. I was lucky this year in that I was able to take my 16-year-old daughter Angie on her first deer hunt. Now, she had hunted cottontails before, but this was her first big game hunt. In fact, it was the best hunt for me this year.
Jim and Angie first discussed their goals. Angie's sights were set on a buck bigger than a spike or 2-point because she wanted something a little bigger than her older sister's first bucks. Jim also wanted Angie to see a lot of deer and get accustomed to finding them and practice getting ready for a shot. With this in mind, Jim chose an area where deer are easy to see and locate. Since it will take a little more time to set up for a shot, Jim also wanted an area close to private land where the deer should be less intimidated from seeing people.
Before taking Angie into this area, I did a little bit of pre-scouting and found some deer tracks, and knew there were quite a few deer in this little pocket of timber. I wanted to give her the opportunity to see as many deer as possible. I knew there's some does in here and some little bucks. And I also knew there were some fairly decent bucks in this area. I want to make sure that when she actually takes a shot, she's got a dead rest, the animal is not moving, and that she doesn't, of all things, wound it. Because as a first-time hunter, that's one of the toughest things that can happen. Now there's a little buck that we were watching. Actually, he was 2 or a small 3-point, but he was in that brush. Now, a more experienced hunter might have taken that buck. There were several opportunities, but I just wanted to be really sure that she had a clear opportunity at a vital area, so there could be no mistakes. Actually, that deer was probably a 3-point buck with about an 19 inch spread, but we just couldn't quite get on him. He didn't offer a standing shot in the clear.
Now the 4-point is walking off. I don't see them. Can you see the 4-point?
No, we had to pass him. Just didn't have a chance to take that deer. A few years down the road, she'll be able to take him because she'll be more experienced, but not for right now. We still have to be very cautious. Here's a little buck that didn't quite see us. The wind was right. He knew something was up. But we were perfectly still, so he didn't really know we were in the area. He saw something. But he was just a little, this would have been a fairly good shot for Angie, but she was looking for a little bigger buck. So we just kind of watched him, giving her the opportunity to see game and collect her nerves, collect her thoughts. You can see these little guys are still a little spooky, not quite sure. So they're going to wander off here, and we're just going to let them go. Next year it'll be fair game. Not this time. We're back here again on the other side of this little forest, still looking for that buck. Again, a little one shows up. There are quite a few little bucks in this area. But I had to remind Angie that her brother actually killed a little buck like this, but it was no dice. She still wanted a bigger one than her sisters. So we held out. I knew there were some better bucks in the area, so we weren't really in a big hurry. We still had another week in the season.
Deer in bed, he's just under the top of the ridge.
When an opportunity arises, Jim is always willing to take time out to explain anything about mule deer and their habits to Angie.
You can see that way.
Well, we didn't get one today, but we gave it a good try, huh?
Yeah.
Hunting isn't just killing something, it's a whole, everything you see, like that ram we saw this morning, and all that big bunch of elk,
Mm-hmm.
and that little buck you passed up.
Mm-hmm.
Are you sorry you passed it up?
Nope.
Nope?
Nope.
Well, next week we'll give it a try again.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Go. It's a week later now, and we're in another area where I hope there might be some opportunities of deer. There's one right there. It's a buck. He looks like a, not a bad little forked horn. Okay, let's move up this way. Move up this way.
Great, let's get to the fence. Get up there. Use the fence as a rest. Use the fence as a rest.
There he is, right there, see?
Uh-huh.
Wait a minute, there's a little balcony. Okay, wait till he turns. Okay, right there, right behind his shoulder.
Okay.
You got him. He's not going anywhere. You got him. Good deal. You got him.
I saw that here.
Not too far. He's down in this little gully. I see him. Hey, he's a 3-point. Come here, look at this.
Your first buck is a 3-point.
Come here. See him right there?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that neat? Look at that.
All right.
Look at that.
Hold on. Just make sure he's dead. Yeah. See his eyes open?
Mm-hmm.
He's not breathing? Congratulations, kid.
Thank you.
Great deal. Look at that. You made a nice shot, but you had some branches in the way. You hit him right here in the shoulder. That's fine. That's a good shot. Look at that. Angie's first buck.
About time.
Now you know what we have to do? A little ceremony. Huh?
Okay.
You're not scared, are you? It won't hurt.
No. I'm not scared.
This is called being blooded. Now you're blooded. You're a hunter. Congratulations, buddy.
Thank
You'll be a lot more after that. That's it.
I'm better.
Angie's first buck is going to be one of my fondest memories ever, including all the other hunts with my kids as well. And you know what?
Okay, look.
It's going to be her best memory too, no matter how many times she hunts. That first deer is going to be the most vivid in her imagination.
Okay, look, smile.
That buck up there is actually a pretty nice forked horn. He's got probably a 20-inch spread. He's with a few does. The bigger guys aren't quite with the does yet because it's just a little bit too early, but we're just kind of scouting here, trying to get a bit of the lay of the land and see where we're at from the roads, and then we're going to start hiking with our day packs and spend all day up in the hills. But Right now it's kind of a look-see trip, and this little buck's kind of got me excited, just because I know there's a lot bigger ones out there.
Shortly before the season, Jim goes to the areas that look promising from his maps to do some infield scouting. Traveling around with a spotting scope, he can get a good look at the terrain, locate deer, and try to see what size of bucks are in those areas. During this time, Jim is locating their feeding and bedding sites, and also looks for any undisturbed draws and pockets that later, when season arrives, could contain some good bucks.
We're hunting at a time of year here when deer are basically coming down off the high country into the winter range where we're hunting. And for an example of the high country, you can see those snowy mountains back there behind me. Well, those mountains go up to about 10 or 11,000 feet, and those deer live there pretty much in the spring, summer, and early fall. But now in November, they're down. They're no longer on that mountain because there's 5 to 6 feet of snow up there at least. What they're doing is they're coming down. It's important when you're hunting this time of year in an area like this to be at kind of in the migration route. Now, the major farms and valley bottoms are this way. We're kind of in an intermediate area in between, and that's where you want to be when the deer are coming from the mountains down into the lowlands. We've got a situation here where these mule deer are now down on their winter range. You can see they're out here along the fields where they're feeding all night long, early in the morning, late in the afternoon. Typically, these deer would be way up in the mountains in the summertime, but as the fall progresses and snow drives them down, they come down here in this critical country that has less snow and more feed. Here's a situation where you could take advantage of public land surrounding fields, which is the case in many western areas. If there's public land around the fields, you can bet that these deer are not going to be hanging around like these are because there's no hunting around this. This is private. In the case of public land, don't look for deer close to the fields when shooting light arrives in the morning because they're going to be gone. Many times they'll go more than a mile to get to a bedded area. So basically what you want to do is try to get up in the hills before sunup and look for deer coming out of the fields into the public land where you are. In the evening, same situation. Get up in the hills and look for deer coming down into the valleys. But you can bet that a lot of deer have gone over this ridge, and perhaps some of them are bedded up in those trees on the ridge as well. They're all in different groups. It doesn't necessarily mean that because all the deer are in the field at night that they're all going to be bedded close. They can split up. We've already seen several herds of does and smaller bucks taken off for different areas. So you want to be alert to the fact that you can find deer many areas around these fields, not only close by, but up to a mile or 2 miles away as well.
When season opens, Jim now knows some prime areas to start hunting.
There's a pretty good buck. Looks like he's a 4-point, but he's pretty thin horn. We're looking for something a little more massive, and today's only the first day of our hunt, so I think we can do better than that. But he's bedded right in that little draw. So far the wind is just right. He doesn't see us or hear us. We'll try to get a little bit closer. Since this is pre-rut, sometimes these bucks hang out together. So we're going to ease over the hill just in case there's a bigger buck with him. He's not that bad. After moving up on this buck, he looks a whole lot better than he did before. In fact, he's got real deep forms. He's got a lot of mass. I just can't tell how wide he is because he's looking away from us. He's still bedded. I'm going to get set up and whistle and see if he'll turn and look at us and give us an idea how wide he is. was a nice heavy buck, but he just wasn't very wide. I think he was maybe 26 wide at best. He never gave us a shot once he left the bed. Yeah, they usually give you that long shot, the long look when they're out there a ways. He's out there probably 600-700 yards. He stopped to look back finally. He's a nice buck. He's a big bodied buck. And there's been many, many times I would have taken him. But one a lot smaller. I think we could probably do better. I hope. Don't forget these little spots off the beaten path. This is an old road going through some BLM public land. And this buck was in a gully right next to the road. We're parked quite a ways up here, but obviously there's been no traffic on this road. So this deer was laying within 40 yards of the road. So that just goes to show that sometimes deer feel secure in places where they're not disturbed. And obviously no one's been up here because it looks so unobvious. And that sometimes can be a key to try every place. Let's go see if we can find a bigger one. I hope I did the right thing. He was really a pretty nice buck.
This is always a very hard choice to make on the first day. Shoot or pass up on a nice buck. But if you know what your goals are beforehand, you will be able to make this decision much easier. Jim's tactics for both the morning and evening hunts is getting up high on a vantage point. From here, you can then glass and observe the deer moving from their feeding areas to their bedding sites. When you locate a potential trophy buck, you must decide to either try and intercept him or keep glassing him until he beds down and then put a stalk on him. On this buck, Jim decides to try and intercept him, but he must hasten his steps so the buck won't get too far ahead of him. Once you get close, slow down, watch the wind, and be alert in all directions, especially when cresting a ridge.
I think that's our buck, but I can't be sure because he's got his head down, he's feeding, but the wind is just right. If he just lift his head a little, nope, it's a doe. It's not him, it's a doe. Another doe right here. He's got to be around close because there's does right here. There's a deer. I think that's the buck. Yeah, that's it. That's him. There he is right there. About 200 yards out. I just couldn't get on very well. He's not going far. I just didn't, I was breathing too hard, man. There's a smaller buck that joined up with the big guy. Any other time he'd be nice, but he's nothing compared to the big buck. Okay, they're out of sight, let's go. I believe that old boy gave us a slip. Last time I saw him, he was pretty close to the unit boundary. And I'm positive he got across, and that's the end of that guy. He was a good buck, too. I had a great shot at him at one point, but I was breathing real hard coming up that slope, and I just needed another second to settle it, and he just turned, and he was out about 200, and I just didn't have a shot. That's the one that got away, and that's the one that keeps us hunting. That's why they call it hunting. In open country like this, it's really tough to figure out where deer are going to bed because it's so open. Typically, they might be on the brushy south slopes in a lot of areas. If it's real hot, they may go to the more forested north slopes. But here, there's juniper cover pretty much everywhere, although there's a little bit more in the north slopes. But one thing I do like to do is I like to get up fairly high in a place like this. And what they like to do is to have the wind blowing so they can smell what's coming up behind them and look in the opposite direction. So for example, say that the wind's coming this way, they can look down there and see what's going on, and they can smell what's up here. But you can have a lot of success by just sitting in a place like this and just plunk down, get comfortable, and put those binoculars up and just glass those shady areas. Today it's pretty warm. The weather really has improved as far as being balmy, and it's probably already close to 40 degrees now. It may get a little bit warmer. In this case, those deer are going to want to be, there's little patches of snow, and we want to be close to that snow and in as shady places as they can, especially in these little draws. But they still want to be up high where they have that advantage of elevation.
During midday, time will now be spent glassing for the bedded bucks. This is also a good time to explore and hunt those good-looking, undisturbed draws and pockets that could contain a trophy buck.
I like hunting these little narrow canyons because bucks like to bed in these things. They're fairly secluded and quiet. And if you jump one, a lot of times they'll scoot across to the other side and give you plenty of time for a shot. From here to the other side of the canyon, it's only 90 or 100 yards, so if you jump your buck up here and he goes that way, I've got a good opportunity. Sometimes, of course, they'll go up away from you where you can't see them, but enough times they'll cross over where it makes this a good little hunt, especially in midday like this when we know they're bedded.
When hunting draws, some bucks will let you walk by and stay bedded. Others will get up and try to escape without being seen. By walking slowly, stopping often, and glassing in all directions, you will increase your odds of locating that buck in time for a shot.
Give him 3-4 more years and he'll be a nice mature buck. For sure, we're going to leave him alone on his hunt. Maybe look for him in about 3 years. We've been out here walking for about 2 hours this morning, over the hills and through the canyons and on the ridges, and didn't see much, and came down to the truck and took a look, and lo and behold, there's a pretty nice buck out there. So you never know where he's going to be. He doesn't look like he's got a whole lot, but he's probably a small 4x4. There's no little buck with him, but I think there might be some more deer in that country because there's some fields on the other side.
Jim decides this buck deserves a closer look.
The wind is blowing this way, so obviously we want to come in from him downwind, and there's a bit of a hill down below him that would probably screen us, and that hill will probably get us within 200 yards. And that looks to me like the best approach, but I can't tell his width because he hasn't looked at me yet, so. But nonetheless, he doesn't have really deep forks. But we're gonna head that direction anyway and see what else we can find.
The hilly terrain allowed Jim to get a lot closer than he first expected.
He's a pretty buck, but he's got a real narrow width in his, he doesn't have real deep forks. He's nothing like some of the others I've passed up. I tell you, it gets the heart pumping. There he goes over those rocks. He's pretty. Look at those guys, just like mountain goats. Oh, isn't that nice? Isn't that pretty? See, he's about maybe 20, 21 inches wide, fairly high, but his back forks aren't well developed. Believe me, there are many times I've taken that buck, but we're just in too good an area. We'll just keep trying, and the longer we try, the closer the rut gets. A lot of times, just like that, when the buck's going away from you, they look a lot bigger. See how his ears are back? It gives you the illusion of a real wide spread. And that's the time when a lot of times I weaken. And now you can see what he's really got. But when he turns his head and lays those ears back, there you go. Both, usually that tip-to-tip spread right there is anywhere from 20 to 21 inches on a buck that size. So we're going to keep on trying.
The spot and stalk method is by far the most challenging and heart-pounding experience. First, you need to locate a bedded buck that is hopefully unaware of your position.
This looks like a pretty nice buck. He's got a real high rack. We can't quite tell if he's got 4 on each side, but he's a half a mile away at least, and it's hard to tell, so we're going to move in close. Now, we got a little problem. He's facing this way, the way he's bedded, so we can't come in on him that way because there's no cover. And also the wind seems to be going kind of downhill, so we may have some problems with the wind, but we really don't have any choice. So I think what we'll do is try to get a little bit closer and take another look and then check the wind again and figure another final approach.
Once located, a stalk needs to be planned out, keeping important factors like the wind, the buck's view, time of day, and the terrain when making plans for your stalk. If time and terrain permit, a periodic look at the buck will help your confidence level that he is still there. When getting close, slow down, get ready, and always be aware that there could be other does or bucks in the area.
Buck is only 80 yards away. He's bedded. He's looking at us. I think he's just got our wind, but he can't quite tell. It's an easy shot from here. I've got these shooting sticks, but I'm going to pass him. It looks like he's only about 22 wide, 4 points on one side, 3 on the other. Bye-bye, Mr. Buck.
If the buck gets up and runs, he may stop, turn, and look back, presenting you with a good broadside shot. So always get into shooting position if that is the buck you want.
truck is a tiny green speck down there, so that's what it takes in mule deer country. Here we go again. One of the big dangers in making a stalk like this is losing your perspective. We spotted that buck from way back here. We're making a circle. The landform changes as we move. All of a sudden you see little draws that weren't there before. You see ridges that were low that you didn't see before. All of a sudden you pop out a little ridge and you say, now where the heck was that? Where was that buck bedded? You can lose your perspective, so pick a landmark. The landmark we picked was a tree that the buck was laying next to. Now I can't see it from here, so I picked another landmark that I can see down low. And I know once I get to that one, then I'm going to be back on the buck. But it's so easy to be confused when you make a circle, especially in country like this where you have no fixed landmarks, no way to tell exactly where you are. You can use a fence line, you can use a big rock, you can use a snag, anything that's distinctive. It helps you locate yourself. That's very important in this kind of hunting.
And of course, there will always be stalks that don't always end up with an encounter.
Well, that old boy gave us a slip. The wind changed right at our backs. There was nothing we could do. We were coming up one spine of a ridge. Blew right at him. We never saw him go out. We found where he was bedded. He went right over the top of these cliffs. I'll tell you, that was a climb. Lots of exercise, but that's about all. Well, he won that one. Maybe we can find him again or another one before we're done. Of course, it didn't necessarily have to be the wind. It could have been just he decided to take off and start roaming. Or he could have heard a little rock clatter. It was pretty noisy coming up there, even though I was trying to be noisy. There's all kind of reasons, but I think the wind got us. At any rate, he's gone, and I'm up here, and my truck's down there. And there's more bucks to find. So here we go again.
Just because the buck wasn't there does not mean you did something wrong. There could be 10 other reasons why the buck may have left on his own, but the thrill and excitement of knowing he may be there will make you want to try again.
Let's say you've done everything right and you come up to a bedded buck. There he is. First of all, would you shoot a bedded buck? I would. You know, to me, taking a buck in his bed is the quintessence of hunting. That means you've done everything right because, as I said, that's when he's at his most alert. But many times a bedded animal presents a difficult shot. Maybe you should take the shot, maybe you shouldn't. Now we're going to show you a few bedded bucks, different situations, and show you how I evaluate each one of them. This particular buck offers kind of a chancy shot because if you're off just by 6 or 7 inches, you could hit him in the face or in the mouth somewhere. I would suggest you have a real steady rest if you're going to try the shot. And it's not impossible. It's not all that difficult, but you're going to have to shoot about 8 inches to the left of his neck. And you can take him right behind the shoulder, right about midsection there, between the top of his back and where he's bedded. But again, you want to be careful on the shot. You want to have an absolutely dead rest and know exactly where that bullet's going. This is a deadly shot. This big old buck has just about got us made. He's looking right at me. It's a bit chancy because obviously his rump is close to the closest to the shooter, but you still have a great neck shot here. And look at the size of that neck. He's fully in the rut. I would take him just above the rump where you can see that line of his hind quarter. There's a point between there and his neck, and that would be a good shot. Again, I would want a really solid rest to know exactly where that bullet was going, because you don't want to hit him in the hind quarter, and that could be a possibility if you're not right on with your bullet. I would not shoot at this buck because there's just not enough of a target. Basically what you've got is just a tiny target between his jaw in his rump. There's way too much chance you're not gonna take him. Now notice his eyes are closed. He's kind of basking in the sun. There's one trick you can try here, and that is to whistle, because he's going to open his eyes and possibly change position or just get up and look at you. You want to be ready when you whistle, because that might give you the opportunity to take him. But otherwise, I would definitely pass on this particular buck. This buck is offering an excellent broadside shot. I'd take this shot just as if he was standing up, because you've got everything there. Simply hold behind his shoulder. Remember, your target's a little bit constricted when he's lying down because you've got a little bit less space. His belly is down close to the ground. His legs are underneath him. So it may give you a different illusion as far as perspective where everything lies on his body. But I would just take him midsection behind the shoulder, just like as I would as if he was standing up. This is not a bad shot at all. Here's a buck bedded. He's about 150 yards away, and if you've got it dead rest, this is not a bad shot, but you'll want to be fairly careful because he's looking away, and he's not presenting as much of his body as he might if he were standing. But nonetheless, this is definitely an attainable shot. Just put that bullet right behind the shoulder, just as you normally would, and you can take this animal pretty easily. Boy, what beautiful country. This is mule deer land. But you know, when you come right down to it, mule deer can adapt in all kinds of habitats. You know, muleys, I think, unfortunately, have a kind of a stigma. I don't know how many times I've read stories or heard people say that muleys are dumb. Well, you know, first of all, you got to consider where those animals live. A lot of them live in open country like this. As compared to whitetails that live in thicker country, and they have more security cover. Muleys are more used to the open. They use their eyes a whole lot more than whitetails do. But I'll tell you what, if you want to match wits with a big buster, mature muley buck, then you're probably going to have to get into some physical activity, such as walking and hiking up to where I am right now. I'm up in the rimrock here, and my truck is way down there. It's just a little teeny speck, and it's going to take probably a couple hours to get back to it. And I spotted a buck up on this ridge. He got away from me, but that's typical. That's what really mule deer hunting for those big guys is really like. And one thing too, a lot of folks think that there's a 30-inch buck on every ridge. Well, that's unfortunate because the width of horns are basically a function of genes. You can't say that there's 30-inch bucks anywhere, no matter how old they are, because they're not programmed gene-wise to go that way. So if you're a first-timer coming out west to hunt muleys and you want that 30-inch buck, consider the fact that traditionally or historically, they may never have lived there. So you might have to go someplace else or else settle for another one. And as far as the rut goes, the mule deer rut is basically the same as whitetail rut anywhere. It's usually mid-November on. And what happens in the West many times is if you have enough snow in the high country, that snow will drive deer down to their winter ranges, and combined with the rut that comes on, you have a double whammy. You have a great opportunity for a big buck closer to a road. But the big problem is a lot of states don't have late seasons. So you've got to be kind of careful where you choose and select your state, because obviously if the hunt is only in October, it's far from the rut, and chances are you won't get enough heavy snow in the high country to drive them down. So there's all kinds of possibilities for muleys, but you know, a lot of folks think that mule deer hunting is strictly spot and stalk in open country. Not always, especially now this time of year. Bucks are rutting. We're down here in this creek bottom, a lot of thick cottonwoods. Unlike whitetails, muleys will hang out with a big bunch of does. So you're going to have a lot of deer out there. It makes still hunting even that much more difficult because you got that many more eyes and ears to see. But you can always count on this time of year during the rut, when you got a lot of does around, typically there's going to be a buck with them. In this particular situation, we're in a valley, pretty wide here, maybe 300 or 400 yards wide. You got these slopes, sagebrush slopes. Many times these deer will be down in the valleys feeding in the daytime. And unlike whitetails, which will stay down here in this stuff, they'll go on up the side hills and bed down on exposed areas where they can kind of look down and just have a lot of opportunity to see below them. So in the daytime, the best plan would be to get out of the creek bottom and to do some glassing and then try your spot and stalking. But this time of day, the sun is just coming up, the deer are down here in the bottom, and we're going to do a little bit of still hunting, sneaking very slowly, and looking. And again, there's usually a lot of deer in a group this time of year, so we got to be extra careful. I want that doe to get out of the way. She may see us. There he's crossing the creek. This creek is really an advantage in here because it's noisy enough where it deadens my sound moving. It's absolutely calm day today, as calm as it can be. And you can bet that those big ears on those muleys are going to pick up every sound of my footsteps. But that creek is a great opportunity to cover it up. So I'm going to stick along here as much as I can and use that to my advantage. There he is. There's a buck. Let's see. He was right there. There he is. There, he just crossed the creek. He's walking. I got him. I got him. Boy, oh boy, he is hit hard. I saw him go down. He's up here somewhere, but boy, is there just a blood trail? This snow helps it too, but it really doesn't matter. That buck is down right up here somewhere close by. There he is. All right, he ran about 40 yards after that shot. I think I hit him right above the shoulder. Yeah. All right. He's a 4. Yes, sir. Yep, took him right above the shoulder. But this is mule deer hunting at its best in this kind of country. I am very pleased. He's a nice representative buck. Meat for the table, and my family is really going to enjoy this guy. You know, the standard operating procedure for hunting muleys is basically doing the spot and stalking, especially open country muleys now. Deer are found in all kind of habitat, but in open country, spot and stalking. But in this situation, we had to get down this creek bottom and adapt to where these deer were. And basically that meant still hunting, slipping and just easing along and looking for deer, and there's the result. And I am a happy camper. Well, you know, there's an old saying, and that is that once you pull the trigger, the work begins, and that's exactly what's going to happen here. I've got to field dress this animal, and my truck is a long ways away, so I better get busy.
Look at this crazy weather. This is mule deer hunting. You know, there ain't another place I'd rather be right now. True story, it's great.
That was a pretty good job hanging that guy. He's a pretty heavy buck. Well, that's done. Now all I gotta do is skin him, cut him up, and take him to the kitchen and cook him up. Stay tuned for a great venison recipe. This dish is called George's Egg Rolls, and it's a neat dish because you can make it either as an appetizer or as a main course. They're actually pretty large when you get done with them. They're called George's Egg Rolls because my buddy George down in New Mexico really loves these things, and his wife cooked them one time when I was down there, and they were so good that I had to have the recipe. So here it is. First thing we're going to do, I've got some oil in a skillet, and I've got some deer burger here. Just plain old straight burger. And I'm going to brown the burger in the oil along with some chopped onion. And this will take a little bit, maybe 5 minutes or so. We want to make sure all that meat is well browned. Okay, we've got our meat and onion mixture browned very thoroughly. So what we're going to do now is we are going to stuff these egg rolls. First, we're going to use some whole green chilies. This is just the way they come out of a can. You just buy these in a small can at any grocery store. And I'm only going to demonstrate here a couple of egg rolls. I've got some pre-made, but this will just give you an idea on how we're doing this. Okay. The next step is to take an egg roll. And notice I've got this, you buy these in a store just like they are. They're called egg rolls. And I've got them under a damp cloth, otherwise they dry out very quickly. What we want to do is take some of our mix and put it in our wrapper. A couple of heaping tablespoons will work. Okay, and then we're gonna take some green chili. That stuff, if you like spicy food, there it is. Now we're going to just simply wrap that like this. And some people use water as a sealer. I like to use egg. Egg is perfect glue. Just put some egg on there. That's just one egg beaten. You take that guy and you fold him down. And you wrap it around. And there you have it. There's your egg roll, ready to go. Okay, we've got our oil pretty well heated up. I'm going to turn it down a little bit, and our next step is to simply brown these egg rolls. And basically, since the meat and onion is cooked inside, what we're really doing is we are melting the cheese so that it kind of mixes in with our pepper, our chili pepper. There, now we're going to let those cook for a little bit. Let them brown on each side. We've got these pretty well cooked on one side, and we're going to turn them. They're just about right. You don't want to overcook these because they burn very easily. We're going to let those cook another couple minutes on the other side, and they're done. These are ready to go. The cheese is melted. Chilies are hot. I'm going to put these on our serving plate here. Okay, and then of course we've got some salsa sauce in the middle. Maybe made in New York City, I'm not sure. However, I would bet that it's probably a Tex-Mex salsa in this case. You better be prepared for folks coming back for at least one more. Not many people will just eat one of these. Really delicious. And there you go. George's Egg Rolls. Isn't that a nice looking dish? And they are as good as they look, I promise.